Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. I am Dennis Chow, the co-organizer of this wonderful group. Today, we're talking career hedging in marketing. If you're here, you are here, but you might be wondering what that is. So we're going to talk all about that. 75% of marketers say they're satisfied with their job, according to the latest research from Content Marketing Institute, CMI. However, 71% say they're actively or moderately interested in leaving within the year. So how satisfied are they? One in five is already freelancing on the side. You could be one of the five. And however, many are making less than 1,000 annually from it. So they're not in it for the money, but they're keeping their options open. Welcome to the age of career hedging. Today we have Kim Moutsos, VP of Editorial at CMI, and Lisa Beets, Research Director. They're going to talk about what the research shows about career hedging. And they will also share details on a new tool to help you assess and address your team members' flight risk before they head for the door. Lisa and Kim, thanks for joining and take it away. I'm going to, as you start, I will start sharing the slides.
Thanks, Dennis. I made you do the hard part of the sharing. Yeah, thanks. As Dennis said, I'm Kim Moutsos. I lead the editorial team at the Content Marketing Institute. And for anyone who's not familiar, CMI exists to advance the practice of content and marketing through education, which we do online at our website, and also at online events like Content Marketing World. As part of that mission, we also conduct research about content and marketing practices, as well as the profession itself. So I'm very glad to have my colleague, CMI's research director, Lisa Beets, with me to dig into some of those interesting statistics that Dennis keyed up for us. And as he said, we're calling it career hedging. And we'll talk about what it is, who's doing it, and whether you should be doing it too. I think you've probably gathered the spoiler. Answer is most likely yes. But before we do that, let's talk about some interesting things we found about what's happening with content and marketing careers right now. Lisa, would you walk us through these numbers?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. Well, the job market has changed since we last ran the survey. When we asked employed marketers about job searching earlier this year in February, 43% told us that their company had laid off marketing employees in the last 12 months. And that's a 30% jump in just 2 years. Wow. If we could have our next slide, please, Dennis. So layoffs are heavily concentrated in large organizations. Nearly 2 in 3 companies with 1,000 or more employees laid off marketing staff in the last year, compared to just 28% of companies with fewer than 100 employees. Not surprisingly, 69% of marketers working in companies where layoffs have recently occurred are concerned about being laid off themselves. And managers and leaders aren't immune to this anxiety. Individual contributors show the highest concern at 52%, but managers are at 43% and leaders are right there with them at 40%. So people are concerned about layoffs, and once they are laid off, they're facing some tough new realities. Next slide, please. 75% say finding a job is more challenging than it was 2 years ago. That's up from 54% in 2024. And 5.2 months is the average reported time to find a new job. That's up from 3.1 months in 2024. But keep in mind that the 5.2 months only includes people who successfully found jobs. So the real average is likely much higher. There's one sort of bright spot. Next slide, please. Marketing teams are hiring. We found a net positive score of 22.3 points when it comes to all hiring, despite a negative 19.8 score for entry-level hiring. So that means there's marketing team growth. It's just concentrated at the experienced and specialized end of the market.
Okay, Lisa, thanks. So obviously we're seeing turbulence in the job market. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody who's watching. But we're not here to talk about job searching exactly. We're here to talk about what's happening to people who still have content and marketing positions and what steps they're taking to protect their futures. Lisa, maybe we can talk about a few of those findings if Dennis will push us on to the next slide.
Sure. Okay, so let's look at marketers' current situation. So first of all, we've heard from many marketers who say they're working harder than ever. In the last year, 50% gained new responsibilities without advancement or increases in pay. 76% say they're doing the work of more than one job. And a whopping 91% say they're expected to do more without support. Add to that 59% who describe their workload as overwhelming, most often due to role consolidation.
Wow.
Next slide, please. Good old AI. We can't ignore the role that AI plays here. So companies point to it as a way to streamline workloads. But as one respondent told us, we have access to AI tools at our own expense to make the workload and work processes streamlined, but no support and no time to learn how to properly use them. Next slide, please. But surprisingly, marketers feel pretty positive about the jobs they have. 75% say they're very or somewhat satisfied with their current job. But on the other hand, 71% say they're actively, highly, or moderately interested in pursuing a new role in the next 12 months.
Okay, great. Dennis, how about the next slide? So I thought this young woman's little eye roll kind of captured this moment, right? People say they're satisfied with their jobs, but at the same time, they're looking for the next opportunity to move on. So what is that all about? Is that an issue with trust in the employers, or is this just a more rational and adaptive workforce? And what should you, if you're an individual practitioner, or if you're a leader who might be career hedging at the same time, what should you do about all this? Dennis, push us on to the next slide, if you would. As you know, you all watch the news and read the news, same as I do. People at all levels are watching their colleagues get laid off. They're reading the headlines. They're hearing about how companies talk about them. And the next slide makes this really loud and clear. Lower value human capital. That really speaks volumes about what that company feels about their employees, right? And marketing people are smart, right? They're hearing all this, they're seeing what's happening to their colleagues, and people are hedging their bets. So if you'll move on to the next slide, let's really dig into this notion of career hedging. Exactly, it sounds exactly like what it is. It's the practice of intentionally hedging your bets, meaning reducing your risks regarding your professional future while you're still employed. If you'll take us on to the next slide. Oh, we're there. Go back. Sorry, you were ahead of me. I took this metaphor from Robert Rose, our chief strategy advisor, who wrote an article about this recently. And the link to that article is in the resources that are at the end of these slides. We'll make sure we get those to you one way or another. He used a metaphor that really stuck with me. He said that when companies spend years signaling that their people are interchangeable, or as that headline showed, low value, those people stop acting like owners and start acting like tenants. And what he meant by that was that tenants maintain the minimum. They'll do what they have to do. They keep the lights on. They show up. They do their work. They smile in the town hall. But they might be saving their best parts, the energy and creativity and growth, to invest somewhere else. Lisa, do you want to share with us what the data says about that and how they're doing this?
Sure, Kim. So one thing marketers are doing is freelancing on the side. 22% of full-time employed marketers told us they're freelancing. Now, that might not sound like a lot until you do the math. Statistically, 1 in 5 people on your team has a side client relationship. And leaders who are director level and above freelance at the highest rate at 26%. Managers are at 23%, and individual contributors are at 20%. And it's not necessarily about the money. A quarter of manager level marketers and individual contributors of freelance take home less than $1,000 a year from the side work. And among leaders who freelance, a few, I'm talking 12%, bring in $30,000 or more annually from side work. So this suggests they're monetizing expertise that the full-time market undervalues, or they're building a serious exit ramp. But for those who aren't doing it for the money, what are they getting out of it? Let me read to you what one survey respondent told us. I currently work a corporate job, a freelancing job, and I'm starting a new business, all because I can't get growth in my current role. I can't find a higher paying job, and the cost of living is expensive to keep up with. So digging deeper here, our qualitative research shows us that marketers who are freelancing are keeping their networks warm. They're working muscles that their day-to-day jobs don't ask them to use. They're maintaining relationships and portfolios outside of one organization, and they're doing the craft work, the writing, the storytelling, editing, and strategy work.
Okay, so what should people do about this, or what could people do about this? Dennis, would you push that on for us? Thank you. I'm going to tackle this in two perspectives: what you can do if you're an individual contributor, and what you can do if you're a manager and leader, keeping in mind that you're also potentially career hedging yourself. Okay, so first, what individual practitioners can do. The most important thing is to know your value and make that visible. Layoffs have jumped 30% in 2 years. So make yourself hard to replace by making sure people understand what you contribute. Every marketer should be able to answer, what did I deliver this year that wouldn't have happened without me? Who in leadership can articulate my value? And what's my 60-second case for why I'm hard to replace? The next point is to not to career hedge, do exactly what we're talking about. Don't just hug your job. Here's what that looks like in practice. Keep your existing network warm. Don't wait until you need a job to reach out to former colleagues. Consider taking on freelance work that helps you keep your skills sharp and your portfolio current. And treat your career as something that you manage actively rather than something that happens to you. And finally, don't wait for your organization to develop you. I like your comment, Floyd. Only 25% of marketers are very satisfied with their organization's career development opportunities. If yours isn't investing in your growth, take matters into your own hands. Seek out mentors, pursue projects that stretch you, invest in your own development. And if your organization isn't providing what you need, these things are even more important. And do this even if you think your job is safe. So Lisa, I'm going to ask you to tackle what the advice is for managers and leaders, and keep in mind that I'm Lisa's manager, so I'll be taking notes on what she has to say.
Sure, Kim. So managers and leaders are in an interesting position. You might be career hedging yourself while also trying to retain your team. So the first thing you'll want to do is get honest about employee experience. It's time to think clearly about how AI, layoffs, and attrition have reshaped your team's workload. Then develop a plan to address it. You start by asking each team member to map out everything they are responsible for today versus 2 years ago. And you might discover that you're also overwhelmed, that you're also doing the work of more than one job. And that's important information too. Use that information to identify who's at risk. And we'll come back with how to do this in a moment. But the important thing is, don't get complacent. Remember that many organizations are growing their marketing teams, and they're looking for the very people that they want to keep. Talented, experienced marketers. And finally, invest in opportunities for skills development. Remember what people are doing in their freelance work. We talked about this: writing, storytelling, strategy, editing, the craft skills, the ones their day jobs ask them to use less of as AI absorbs production work.
Okay. So getting back to the question of how to identify who's at risk of leaving your team, We looked at the data from the 2026 Career and Salary Outlook research, and that's based on the responses of 644 global marketers, but mostly in the US. And we found some very interesting correlations between those who are actively looking to leave their jobs and several risk factors. So we built an interactive tool. It's free, but it's available for managers to help them to identify those risk factors in their team members. And of course, you could take it for yourself too, if you're curious. Dennis, if you push us on to the next slide. So this is what it looks like. And the link is at the end of these slides. You'll be able to try it out for yourself. This is the opening screen. And basically it explains that you'll answer 11 questions about based on what you know about your employee, what you observe about them. And even if you need to guess, it's okay. You can take it more than once and see how your answers change their risk profile. Once you're done, you'll get a snapshot of that employee's risk score. Dennis, you could probably go through a slide or two. Okay, here, you can give your employee a name so that you'll be able to associate your results with them. You can make up a name, give them a code name if you don't want to, use their actual name for privacy reasons, and then go on to the next slide. And you'll see that it's a series of fairly simple multiple choice questions. Again, you're going to make your best guess. At the end, you'll see this, which is the snapshot of their risk profile. You'll see where they scored high, where they scored low, and then you'll also see some advice about what to do about that. There is a gate at the end. If you go through that gate, you'll be able to download the results as a PDF, and there's a little bit more robust findings there that you can save if you want to revisit it again in their 6 months or a quarter. If you do a quarterly kind of where are we check in with your employee, you could rerun the survey after that and sort of compare your findings. But one of the interesting things that we found a correlation with that surprised us is that how satisfied people felt at their job turned out to have the strongest correlation with how likely they were to leave. We thought it would be something like overwhelm or pay, but it turns out how they feel about their job is really the thing that had the most weight in terms of whether they were looking to leave. So that's a real opportunity to those of us who are managers to make sure that we're having those conversations and listening to our employees and really having frank discussions about where they are and what they want to do so that you can make sure when opportunities do arise, you're keeping your best people. They're not heading out for something else. So make sure to have those conversations early and often. As Robert puts it, if you treat your marketers like tenants, like people who are interchangeable, temporary, easily replaced when the lease is up, don't be surprised if that's exactly how they behave. So that's really what we wanted to talk about with you today and share with you today. And I thank you all for joining us. We've got links, I think the next slide, Dennis, links to all the things that we talked about today, and an invitation to get $200 off if you decide to join us in Denver for Content Marketing World this year. That's a code for members of the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. And I'm happy to take questions or just have an open discussion about anything that might have surprised you, anything that this reinforced for you, or anything else we can help you with.
Thanks so much, Kim and Lisa. And I will put these slides, I will share these slides with the group. So the meetup page that you signed up, you RSVP'd on today, I'll post it there. I guess I'll start. I'm going to stop sharing. I'll start with a question. So I'm also surprised, Kim, you were just saying that, and we'll get to you right after this, Floyd. The people that were most satisfied were also the most likely to leave, right?
Oh, sorry. No, that's not quite what I meant. What I meant was that job satisfaction score is the thing that's correlated most with their likeliness to leave. So the people who said, I'm not satisfied, they're likely to leave. But what surprised us was that had more weight in terms of more influence in terms of whether they said they were actively looking than any other factor. So the other factors were things like whether they felt what their level of compensation was, whether they felt overwhelmed by their responsibilities. So those other kinds of questions that we sort of went through, people feel overwhelmed, they're taking more than one role, all of those things had less influence on whether someone decided to leave than how they felt about their job. Presumably a negative feeling about their job is what drove them to leave. That's not saying that those other things couldn't tie into what made them feel unsatisfied, but how they answered that one question was the driving factor, was the heaviest weighted factor in the correlations that we saw.
And in the research, as far as job satisfaction, was there any questions that dove into the relationship between the employee had with his or her manager?
That's a great question. I don't think we asked that question, though we did think about it. Lisa, can you help me on that one? I don't recall if that was on the actual survey.
Yeah, it is a great question, and it was not on the actual survey. And it was one of the things we thought about when we were developing the flight risk calculator, although we didn't ask. But it's a great point.
I have seen research around that. I mean, people cite that as a factor very often, but we didn't ask it on our survey, so we weren't able to weight that. But it's probably a really good one for us to add the next time we do this.
Because what I've learned in my 20, 30 years working in full-time roles is my job satisfaction is almost directly correlated to the relationship I have with my direct manager. So, because it's so, there's like that overused term, you don't leave a company, you leave your manager.
Yeah.
So I think it is something that for me is like a huge factor in how you think of your job. Floyd, I saw your hand raised before. If you have a question, feel free to come off mute.
Thank you for the reminder about mute. And I see that it looks to me like the questions mostly apply to any marketer, not only to content marketers. So I'm just interested for clarification and understanding, and in sharing these results with other people. Who did the survey go out to? Who answered it, and those kind of questions. Because of course, if you work in tech for a while, you usually end up being part of surveys like this of your own customers. So just some of those clarifications would be interesting for me.
Lisa, that's a great one for you to take on.
Sure, it is. Great question. The survey went out to both a variety of titles of marketers. So we have content marketers, general marketers. Our qualifying question asks if you are a content marketer or a marketer working in another role that involves content. So you're right, Floyd. It does include both general marketers and content marketers.
As long as they have a role that really touches, if they're doing something that's completely unrelated to content, and there are fewer and fewer things in marketing that don't touch content in some way. But yeah, if we did ask them to, whether they specifically have something to do with content. That's a great question. And can I ask you a question? Did you take that beautiful picture behind you, or is that just like a backdrop that you chose?
This one, I actually have a really nice one I took down in Pacifica, but this is generic or licensed. So, yeah.
Well, I hope the next time that we're on a call together, you have your Pacifica background on there, because I love
Thank you.
And I can imagine it's gorgeous.
I think you had the Pacifica in past meetups.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Switch. Yeah.
Okay, sorry to take us off topic. But it is the Bay Area meetup, so I think it's okay for us to talk about that.
For sure. Other questions? I see Cam is unmuted. Oh, Michael has his hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. Hi. Quick question. Did you do any analysis related to the overall health of the companies where people were looking at looking at the data specifically to say, were there issues of company health that were driving things like satisfaction?
Oh, that is such a great question. I'm going to kick that over to Lisa.
Yes. Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you. Great question. And we did not. And I think it's a great point, something we should think about for next year's survey.
And I see you there in Redwood City. Climate Best by Government Test. I'm nearby in the City of Good Living, which locals will know what that is.
So I had a thought, which is maybe a more forward-looking marketing leader, because I think one of your slides, Kim, was talking about transparency and communication with the marketing leaders team, and I think this would have to get approval from the marketing leaders manager. But since the statistics show that the CMI research shows that a lot of people are already doing career hedging, maybe maybe there should be a documented policy and say, we know you're probably considering hedging.
Yeah.
Here's where we allow it. Here's what works. Here's how you can't use your company computer, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be a forward way of just reinforcing to the team that they can do it under these terms, and maybe it'll improve with retention.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think most companies of a given size probably have that policy. I believe we do here at Informa, which is the owner of Content Marketing Institute. And I've worked at other companies where they do have a formal documented set of policies for moonlighting or freelancing or whatever you want to call it. But that is a really good point, to make sure that if you're a manager, you understand what the guidelines are and you're sharing them with your team, so that there's no misunderstandings about, what you can do during company time, what you can do on your own time, et cetera. That is a really good point.
Other questions?
Well, it's not really a question. It's just sort of a comment that you guys might want to be aware of HiQ Labs in San Francisco. HiQ Labs, it turns out there's a Wikipedia entry about them. There was a court case with LinkedIn because they were collecting data about people that were most likely to leave. And the theory was, it's going to be very expensive to replace people that leave. But then LinkedIn prevented their access to data.
Wow.
And so HiQ sued for restraint of trade, and they won in the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco. And so LinkedIn said, well, fine, we'll take it to the Supreme Court then. The Supreme Court turned around. The Supreme Court is pretty bizarre these days. But anyway, they said, you got to see what we said in a case of an Atlanta thing where there's a policeman that was stealing information about license plates or whatever. Then everybody basically said, I don't understand how this relates. It's not a similar kind of case at all. Anyway, it's an interesting company because they also were doing profiling of people and the probability of leaving. And the whole theory was that if you're going to leave, then it's going to be very expensive to replace you.
Yeah, that's a great study. Or a great example. I'm going to go look at them now. Our research is really based on our own proprietary data. So we just looked at the answers that people gave us and looked at the correlations within the data that we have. It's a great point because, again, 644 people, while that's a fair amount, it's not, it's a drop in the bucket of all the marketers and content people that exist out there. Yeah. So while these are the correlations that we saw in our data, we're not intending to say, if you see a high risk, that person is definitely leaving. It's an exercise to give you a way to open a conversation with people, whether that's your direct report or whether it's your management team, to say, listen, I'm concerned for these reasons. But that's a really great point about that kind of, it's almost, I can see the connection because it's almost surveillance in a way, like giving people signals that they may or may not know that they're giving off in a public forum like LinkedIn or on the streets, through license plate readers. But that's fascinating. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to go.
Yeah, basically they were scraping data from LinkedIn, and LinkedIn turned off their access.
There's some real irony there for so many reasons, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the ruling in the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco was that, people put their resumes on LinkedIn because they want them to be publicly accessible. You can't turn around and say it's accessible to everybody except for this one company.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point.
It sort of made sense. Anyway, it's just kind of a related thing.
Yeah.
So I thought I would share a personal anecdote related to hedging, which was actually 10 years ago. So 2016, as part of this meetup, I had one of the meetup members needed some help with, didn't really have an extended marketing team. So asked me if I could help write some case studies. and it was non-competitive to my employer. So I didn't ask my manager for permission. I probably should have, but I just did like 3 or 4 case studies where I interviewed the meetup members' client and submitted the case study. So I was paid like, as the research showed, it was less than $1,000 per year, but it was just it was like it provided me and my wife dinner. Like it was like small change, but it was still money I wouldn't have otherwise had. And 2 years later, that same employer I was laid off by as part of a pretty big round, and that's when I launched my own. I went out on my own in 2018, and I brought this client with me, and it didn't jumpstart my business, but it was someone I could bring over now that I was out on my own. So I guess I hedged 10 years ago.
Yeah, career hedging, it works, right?
Yeah, it works.
I mean, you could also call it networking, right? Keeping your networks warm, but it's definitely like that sort of like active work outside of work that gives you connections and a portfolio, right? A portfolio that's broader than what you might be doing at your own job. Can't hurt either, right? That connections, proof of your value, etc. Dennis, you have one of the most interesting career stories of anybody I know. You've just done so many different things and found you've taken so many opportunities to pivot, slightly pivot, reinvent, and then really pivot.
Why, thank you. Yeah, for those I think my most recent pivot, I find the most interesting. So for those who don't know, what Kim's referring to is when I moved to Chicago, I started doing part-time work at the airport at O'Hare for United Airlines. So I now I handle some bags coming on and off planes. And it's a part-time job that United gives part-time employees the equivalent benefits package as full-time. So it's just an amazing way to get all the healthcare. What do you call it? I'm a union member. I get pension, 401k, and probably the most lovely thing is flight benefits. So I can fly standby for free wherever United flies.
Wow. That's great.
And then I can also trade. It's called trading off. I can give up half of my shift. So I'm now, sorry, my dog. I'm now partial part-time. Like I'm half part-time, but I still retain the whole benefits package. So it's amazing.
That's cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's some
Contact me if you have any questions
there.
on such a job. Any other comments or questions?
Well, that was a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Kim and Lisa. Do you want to have any words on any upcoming research, or do you want to mention, I think you mentioned Content Marketing World, but plug for this fall in Denver?
Yeah, come see us in Denver. There's a discount code at the end of the slides. Dennis will be there as a speaker. Lisa and I will both be there. And we've got some exciting things going on that might involve some sports teams local to the area, and it should be a good time.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.